All right, I think we're ready to go. Good morning, everyone. Y'all can say good morning.
Morning,
All
Mayor.
right, thank you.
Afternoon, Mayor.
Oh, good afternoon, I should say. Of course, this is budget day, and you know, I am presenting the eighth and final budget. For me, as mayor of the city of Houston, and I take it all city council members have you gotten your little nice book yet? If not,
Cover to cover.
and as you can see on the book cover is the Ailey Multi-Service Center, and we are very proud of, and the Sunnyside Multi-Service Center, and then of course our cadets are also present. So this is fiscal year 2024, and if you haven't gotten it, you can, and certainly it is online. So let me acknowledge all of the council members who are standing with me. Mayor Pro Tem Dave Martin, Council Member Tiffany Thomas, District F, At-Large Council Member David Robinson, At-Large Council Member Sally Alcorn, Council Member Tasha Jackson, who I might add, just graduated from Texas Southern University. Magna cum laude, I might add. So congratulations to you. Carla Cisneros, the council member of District H. And then we have also the finance chair, William Jones, who is present. And where's Melissa Dubowski? Where's Melissa? Melissa's over there, members of finance, and pretty much many of our directors who are also here. If you are a director for the city of Houston, why don't you stand so we can see if you're a director. So we pretty much have close to a full house. Look, I'm honored to present this budget to you. It is the best budget that we are presenting in 8 years. It's the final one, but it is also the best one. And in the final year, it is a budget that in many ways is futuristic because we will be handing off the budget to the city to the next mayor in better financial shape than what I inherited when I came in on January 1st, 2016. In fact, I believe it's one of the better budgets that have been presented by the city in quite some time. So I'm very pleased with that. The fiscal year 2024 proposed budget, I'm pleased to present this budget, the proposed budget for all funds, totals $6.2 billion, an increase of $379.2 million, or 6.6% compared to the fiscal year 2023, a current budget of $5.8 billion. And if you drill down into that, the enterprise fund accounts for $199 million of that $379 million increase, primarily in our combined utility fund due to higher O&M costs. The proposed general fund, and I know it's going to be a lot of numbers, so I'm not going to just rush through very quickly. The proposed general fund budget of $2.9 billion reflect an increase in spending of $120 million, or 4.3%, from the fiscal year 2023 current budget of $2.8 billion. The increase in spending is primarily driven by a few factors. The pay increases for all employee groups, including 3% for municipal employees, 3% for police, and 6% for fire, totaling $51 million. The 6% fire pay raise included in this budget represents the third year of an 18% cumulative pay raise valued at $115 million. $47 million increase in transfers to the DDSRF to support streets and drainage projects in the CIP, coupled with a decrease in debt service of $7 million for a net increase of $40 million for pay-as-you-go and debt. Let me just stop and focus on that. I know there's been a lot of issues and questions raised about giving more to our drainage. Well, in this budget, that is occurring in this budget. In terms as pay-as-you-go, when things started, we owed about $2.4 billion in pay-as-you-go, in the DDSRF, well, you know what I mean. At this point, we have paid about $1.8 billion in pay-as-you-go, $1.1 billion in principal, $649 million in interest, which means, which means what is left to be paid on the pay-as-you-go. We owe $637 million, which is owed, $521 million in principal, and $116 million in interest, which reflects that we are paying the debt down. And as we pay the debt down, there are more dollars that will be available to go to the projects themselves. So that is what is occurring, and I'm pleased with that. And so more money is being given to DDSRF. And then, in fact, and I think we have a slide, in fact, if not for Series 2017 pension obligation bonds, the general obligation outstanding debt otherwise has decreased by $770 million since fiscal year 2016. In addition to the drain of the general fund, an additional $11.3 million transfer is being transferred to the maintenance renewal and replacement fund to address deferred maintenance for a total of $42.9 million. And then the last item that I want to highlight as relates to what we are spending from the general fund, the OPEB, the other post-employment benefit trust contribution. Now, Mayor Pro Tem, you have been strongly supporting the trust fund in order to further reduce the other post-employment benefit liabilities. I know Councilman Malcorn, you've also weighed in on this. In this budget, subject to you all's approval, this budget will set up that trust fund. And we are putting $10 million into that trust fund. So $8 million of that is coming from the general fund, $2 million is coming from enterprise, so the $10 million is including all funds. Without the infusion of ARPA funds, the city, like other municipalities across the nation, would have been forced to implement significant budget cuts and layoffs in fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. As permitted under the ARPA's guidelines, the city used ARPA funding to replace hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue that would have been used for government services to maintain and sustain critical city services. The fiscal year 2024 proposed budget utilizes $160 million in ARPA funding to further address the reduction in revenues due to the public health emergency. But even in the absence of the ARPA funding, and I want to underscore this, even in the absence of the ARPA funding, the city would have been able to balance the fiscal year 2024 budget by drawing down from the fund balance. With the assistance of the ARPA funding, we continue our comprehensive approach against violent crime with the One Safe Houston Crime Reduction Initiative. And additionally, in March 2023, I announced the launch of One Clean Houston to combat illegal dumping. This initiative focuses on three key areas to address the issues. One, rapid cleanup. 2, veteran enforcement, and 3, prevention and education. What I want to underscore with One Safe Houston and One Clean Houston is that we are utilizing the ARPA funding to pay obligations for the next year and the year after. So these initiatives, like crisis intervention and the cleanup initiatives, or tearing down abandoned buildings, those initiatives can continue by the next mayor and city council, funded by those ARPA funding. In terms of long-term liabilities, in 2016 and 2017, the credit rating agencies warned the city was facing 3 structural barriers that threaten its credit rating viability. 1, the credit ratings agencies talked about our unfunded pension liability. 2, it talked about the other post-employment benefits. And 3, the revenue cap. Over my 2 terms as mayor, we have tackled and put into place reforms that have addressed both pensions and other post-employment benefits. With regards to pension, on slide 3, the pension cost avoidance. In 2017, with the help of voters, members of City Council, we achieved historic pension reform. The reform immediately reduced an $8.2 billion liability and put in place a responsible plan to pay off the balance over 30 years. The pension liability now stands, instead of at $8.2 billion, it now stands at a little below $2.2 billion, a reduction of $6 billion. Not only was the unfunded liability tremendously reduced, but also the cost avoidance of projected annual pension contributions, which would have come from the general fund on an annual basis. The cost avoidance, which the city has had the benefit of not having to pay, equals to $1.7 billion since 2018. That's $1.7 billion that we would have had to pay out of the general fund and would have really put us in a bind with other city services. In slide 4, it is important to note that the 3 pension systems are healthier today, municipal, police, and fire, because of the pension reforms we have put in place. And I do want to take a note, because when I came in, or just before I came in 2016, what people said is that, some people said, is that they needed a business person to handle the business matters at City Hall instead of a politician like me. The reality is, you got the politician and the business person all wrapped up in one. The other structural barrier that the credit rating agencies outlined, in January of 2022, this administration introduced the other post-employment benefit reforms with the support of the City Council, and I want to thank you all. And the other post-employment benefit liability was $9.1 billion. Well, let me back up. Without any reforms, the other post-employment benefits would have gone up to $9.1 billion estimated over 30 years. With the reforms that we have put in place, that $9.1 billion has been reduced to $4.5 billion, a reduction of $4.6 billion. In this fiscal year 2024 proposed budget, with the support of Council, we will establish an OPEB trust with a starting contribution of $10 million, which will escalate over time. The city's ongoing contributions to the trust are estimated to further reduce the liability down to $1.1 billion by the year 2048, an additional reduction of $3.4 billion. The goal of the trust is to save and grow through investment earnings, funds that will offset pay-as-you-go costs in the future, while simultaneously reducing the net OPEB liability. On the fund balance, slide 6, the proposed budget includes an ending fund balance of $401 million, which is 16.6% of expenditures less pay service and pay-as-you-go, well above the minimum of 7.5% established in the city's financial policies. That is $220 million above the 7.5% of expenditures less debt service and pay-as-you-go. This represents the strongest fund balance in recent history for a proposed budget. With regards to the budget stabilization fund, this budget fully funds the budget stabilization fund, representing more than $20 million. As we head into hurricane season, Houston is better prepared financially today than we have been over the last 8 years. Additionally, this budget does not draw down from the fund balance, and this budget does not include any one-time land sales or deferrals. With regards to the impact of the property tax revenue cap, slide 7, the fiscal year 2024 proposed budget is based on the existing property tax revenue cap. Depending on the taxable value, we may have to adjust our tax rate to comply with the property tax revenue cap. A higher taxable value may result in tax rate reductions. In fiscal year 2024 alone, the full impact of the cap will result in a loss of $347 million. Since hitting the cap in fiscal year 2015, the full cumulative impact of the cap is $1.8 billion. I want that to sink in. So when we are talking about garbage service, even as it relates to illegal dumping, drainage issues, and others, police, fire, you name it. With the revenue cap in place, we will continue to have to reduce our tax rate. Last year, in view of the increase in property value and to provide relief to senior citizens and the disabled, the tax exemptions for over 65 and disabled tax exemptions were increased from $160,000 to $260,000 and remains in place today. And I want to thank you all, the members of City Council, for approving that. The conservative revenue budgeting, slide 8, sales tax budget versus the actual. While having to live with the limitations of the revenue cap, which as an editorial note, let me just add, as your outgoing mayor, soon to be, your revenue cap has outlived its usefulness. And so for future voters and people in the city, and for the future of this city, in my humble opinion, this cap should not remain in place. Having said that, we have managed to continually propose balanced and conservative budgets, and we continually seek to outperform budgeted expectations annually. For example, on sales tax, our fiscal year 2023 estimated collections exceeded the adopted budget by $85 million, or 10.6%. The fiscal year 2024 proposed budget, again, is conservative, where we are proposing a 3% decrease from fiscal year 2023. But even with these conservative numbers, our fund balance is strong. Let me stop even before I get to the end to thank Will Jones and his entire financial team. Quite frankly, if you are here and you're in finance, just stand up wherever you may be. If you're in finance, Melissa, Jeb, finance. This is just a small representation of the finance department, but I believe Will and Melissa, I believe the two of them have been with me for the past 8 years. They have been with me since the beginning, and I want to thank them for their stellar leadership. In fact, I don't think you will find a better financial team than is represented at this point in time. They have been with me from the beginning, from day one, and in 8 proposed budgets. And even when we faced a $160 million deficit coming in under their stellar leadership, we have been able to put forth stellar budgets. Not one time since I have been mayor have we been forced to lay off one single employee in the city of Houston. On public safety, slides 9 and 10, on HPD hiring per administration. Public safety remains at the forefront. We have fully funded 5 cadet classes for police and 4 for fires. I know Chief Pena is here, and Chief Matt Slinkard is here representing police. I know Chief Fenner is in D.C. with the National Police Week. Current police count is 5,128, with 5 classes expected to graduate by the end of June 2024. But I do want you to focus on the hiring that we have done, and I say we because we have done it together over the last 8 years. For those who say and may come up to you and say, Councilmember Thomas, why aren't you out hiring more police? Hire more police, hire more police. Let me just say, over the last 8 years, we have hired more police. There's only been one mayor in the last 20 years, no, 30? When was Kathy Whitmire mayor?
Early 90s.
There's only been one mayor in the last, let's say, 40 years who have hired more police than we have. That mayor was Catherine J. Whitmire. And if you can recall, she served for 10 years. The second mayor in the last 40 years that have hired more police has been this one. And so in less than 8 years, we have hired about 2,200. And I think Catherine J. Whitmire in 10 years hired about 2,800, as you can see. So we are hiring more. The problem has always been is that we have a significant percentage of police officers who are eligible to retire. And when I came in 8 years ago, we had 38% of the entire police force that could retire at that point in time. We are grateful to our police officers, men and women, who are eligible to retire, who chose not to retire when they could have. And now, through the hiring process, we've been able to drop that percentage from 38% to about 28%. Okay, and as that percent goes down, then the number of police officers on our force can go up. But that does take time. But we are grateful to each and every one of them. And then on budget process and transparency, this fiscal 2024 proposed budget begins the transition to an outcome-based budgeting model. OBB aims to transform the way city leadership makes decisions on the allocation of financial resources by focusing on the expected results and outcomes of city programs and services. In March 2023, the City of Houston finalized the implementation of the Open Finance Initiative to provide more transparency about the city's finances. Open finance allows city advocates to stay informed and gain access to the same information stakeholders and government leaders use to make decisions in the day-to-day operations of local government. This includes publishing relevant, accessible data sets about the city's budget, checkbook, and payroll. In conclusion, the fiscal year 2024 proposed budget is my 8th consecutive budget that is balanced. Before pension reform, the city's projected unfunded liability was $8.2 billion and growing. We have worked together hard to address the liability, and today, with the reforms we have created, the unfunded liability has dropped to $2.2 billion, which is a $6 billion reduction. We have addressed the OPEB liability with reforms introduced last year, projected to reduce the city's OPEB liability from $9.1 billion to $4.5 billion. And in this proposed budget, we will establish an OPEB trust fund that will further reduce the liability down to $1.1 billion in the future. We have authorized significant pay raises to 3 employee groups, including 6% for fire, 3% for police, and 3% for municipal employees in fiscal year 24. Our fund balance is strong, with $220 million above the required 7.5 of expenditures less debt service, pay as you go, and the budget stabilization fund is fully funded. But even if you include the entire fund balance, it is about $401 million. As we look ahead, strong financial management will need to continue by the next mayor and city council. The city of Houston operates under one of the country's most restrictive property revenue caps, in addition to complying with the state of Texas revenue cap and the pressures of inflation. Despite those challenges, the financial health of the city is much stronger than it existed on January 1st, 2016. For those who have been naysayers, who have said the sky was going to fall 8 years ago, it is still up in the sky. 7 years ago, it's still there. 6, 5, 4, 3, and 2, and 1. The sky is still there, and the sun is still shining on the city of Houston. Any gap that may exist in fiscal year 2025 can be fully covered by the fund balance, placing the city in good fiscal position to address future economic uncertainties if the next mayor governs with fiscal financial sound management. That we cannot guard against. The city's net position, which is a strong indicator of a government's financial standing, was the highest in almost 20 years at $5.9 billion. As of the end of fiscal year 22, an increase of $2.2 billion compared to fiscal year 2021. This is my final budget, and I am proud to say I leave to the next mayor a budget that is better than it has been in a long, long time. But I owe it to 16 partners that I've had plus, because some city council members were not here in 2016. But to the members of city council, let me thank you. To the department directors, all of you, let me say thank you. To 22,000 employees who have stayed the course, let me say thank you. And to the people of City of Houston, let me thank you for trusting me to guide this city financially. And for those who say, well, Mayor, but for the federal dollars, we would not be here. Well, the federal dollars wasn't here in 2016. We balanced the budget anyway. And the federal dollars weren't here in 2017 or 2018 or 2019 or 2020. but we balance the budget anyway. It's not the federal dollars that will save you. It's good, sound fiscal management and knowing your job and how to get it done. Because rough times will always come. But let me tell you, when you've grown up and you've been reared when you didn't have much, that you had to make a dollar stretch, but to still cover your needs, even government has to run on those sound principles. I brought to City Hall home what my mama and daddy taught me. They fed 9 kids and took care of us well. And I believe together we have done an excellent job. So members of City Council, I present to you this fiscal 2024 budget. Hopefully you won't amend it too much. But let me thank you. And then at this point, again, I do want to again thank Finance Enough. Will, I am very indebted to you. This guy knows his stuff, and I want you to know I very much appreciate you. Melissa? Melissa? Well, you can stand up, Melissa. In fact, you need to come over here. And the reason why I say that, when I meet with them 3 and 4 times a week, they have come in together, and they have done an incredible job in shepherding this city through some tough financial times. You see me, but I want to give these two, as the leaders of the finance department, the credit they rightfully deserve. So thank you for their donation. And then lastly, before I yield the floor, let me thank the Chief of Staff, because in all of these meetings, financial meetings, Marvelette Hunter has been in all of them, probably knows the budget as much as, well, maybe slightly less than I do. But Marvelette, thank you so very much for your incredible leadership. Really appreciate it. Now I'm honored to yield the floor to the chair of BFA. That is none other than David Martin, and I do want to thank him for his leadership on the trust, and I do want to thank him for his financial guidance and advice. He's been a strong, stellar fiscal leader, and has helped to keep us on track. So please give it up to David Martin.
All right, Dave. Thank you, Mayor. It's always tough to follow Sylvester Turner to the podium, but this is my 11th budget, Mayor, and I think Councilmember Cisneros and Robinson, this is your 10th, and then this is our 4th working together as a group. So if we know something, we should know it by now. But tomorrow we will begin at noon with a series of budget workshops. So I always get nervous and I always get excited about this opportunity. We have 23 individual department budgets that we're going to analyze. And then Will Jones will have his 5-year forecast, and then Comptroller Brown next Thursday will have his projections as well. But just one thing that I'd like to emphasize, the mayor never gives himself and his department enough credit. Never does, but he's always been that way. When you look at the revenue side, 7.7% increase in property tax revenue, and then our projection of a 3% decrease on the sales tax revenue, an extremely conservative number to make sure that we project for the future what we're doing today. On the expenditure side, 4.3% increase in expenditures, of which 6% goes to fire, 3% goes to HPD. Those are the 2 largest budgets you have, but yet a 4.3% on the expenditure side. What I'd love for everybody in this room to really focus in on is a position that we're in with debt. Every city across the United States starts with short and long-term debt liabilities that they're obligated to pay. In 2013, when I entered this office, That was on the heels of layoffs and furloughs. That was entering an administration where we had $160 million in deficit that was projected in your first year. And I always tell people, debt is not a four-letter word, but the way you engineer your way out of debt is critically important to the financial stability of any entity, especially a public entity. So let's go back to 2016 when you first came into office. Runaway unfunded pension liability. Let me repeat that. Runaway unfunded pension liability. Underfunded OPEB, other post-employment benefits. Primary contribution to that is medical costs for our retirees. These are two substantial liabilities that we faced in 2016. And we were warned by our credit agencies, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, Fitch, you better do something about it or you'll be the next Detroit. And that word was whispered around City Hall. So our short and long-term borrowing needed to take a little bit different approach. Working with the business community, the Greater Houston Partnership, and eventually the voters in the city of Houston, we stand here today and what we're looking at should be a Harvard Business School case study on public entity debt reform. Let me repeat myself. The city of Houston and what we've been able to accomplish since 2016 in your administration should be a Harvard Business School case study on how public entities deal with debt reform. So as we prepare for July 1st, which is the beginning of our fiscal year 24, and 50% of our budget we will be in charge of, 50% we will turn over to a new administration. Pension debt in 2016 was $8.2 billion. $8.2 billion. Today, it is $2.2 billion. That is a 73% reduction. 73%. And while we did the reductions, the three pension systems in the city are in better shape today than they've ever been in. So you look at the OPEB, other post-employment benefit debt. 2016, $6.1 billion. Today, $4.5 billion. Almost 50% decrease in the liability on OPEB. This isn't accomplished in every city across the United States. So with our proposed budget, the administration has established for the first time an OPEB trust account with the contribution of $10 million to offset future post-employment benefit costs. And with ongoing contributions from future administrations, our OPEB liability is estimated to be reduced down to $1.1 billion, another 3.48 reduction. So if you look at debt, everybody carries debt in the world that they live in. Cities are enormous with the amount of debt that they incur each and every year. So you look at what we've done, and I'll include we've done in this administration, is taken down a significant impact and made a difference in pension liabilities and OPEB liabilities, which were the most significant challenges this city faced in the year 2016. So while you don't give yourself enough credit, I will. Because what you have accomplished has been tremendous. Working with your team, and we're all exiting, well, some of us are exiting stage right, but it's been a pleasure to work and to do this because, you get mad at me sometimes when I introduce you in public and I call you cheap. But you told the story of you and your family and how your mama raised you, but you are cheap, Mayor. But other people would call it conservative. So this is a tremendous budget that needs to be looked at. But more important, people, Dylan, first page of the Chronicle should be what we've done on pension liabilities and debt financing. So I'll look at you because I know you jumped from there to there to get ready for your questioning. But Mayor, team, administration, council members, fantastic job. This is the best budget that I've ever seen in my 11 years. I would garner that it's the best budget that we've ever had in the city of Houston. $220 million over the required 7.5% on the general fund. And again, what we've done on the debt, kudos to everybody. So thank you.
Thank you. And as we prepare to take questions, I know on the national level, Chief Slinkard, oftentimes people talk about defund police. I mean, that's on a national level. And they always focus on those other cities. They've never talked about the city of Houston, what the city of Houston has done. Because this city has never defunded police, never. We have embraced police. So a lot of positive things that are happening in our city. And I could just go down the line in every department. But I do, and I'm taking my time. Look, this is the final one, okay? So I'm gonna take my time, because I really do want to thank each and every one of the departments. I really do. Because as you all know, we work on these budgets not just during budget time. We're having conversations all throughout the year. And they're tough calls when we don't want to lose staff because they can get paid more out in the private world, or they're asking for more, not because they don't deserve it. They do deserve it and need it. And then there have been times over the last 8 years when we've asked the budget departments to cut. And those are difficult calls, or you don't fill positions. But having said that, the departments, through their own ingenuity, creativity, we have risen to the occasion and met city services as best we could oftentimes, okay? So I really want to thank the departments and the directors for being on this journey with us collectively. So thank each and every one of you. Okay, having said that, don't want to prolong. Are there any questions from anyone that any of us can address?
Hi, Mayor. How's it going?
Hey, Dylan.
You mentioned in there that you don't think the revenue cap is useful anymore. Are there any plans to adjust that on this year's ballot?
I have no plans at this moment.
Is there any estimate on what the deficit would have been absent the ARPA funding? I know you mentioned you would have been able to close it with the fund balance, but I just don't know if there was a number.
Quite frankly, I want to give the Biden and Harris administration and Congress a great deal of credit because the ARPA funding helped us to stand up the 2022, fiscal year 2022, and fiscal year 2023. So it bought us time, and it bought time for the economy to recover. So in the absence of it, not just the city of Houston, but cities across the board would have gone under. I mean, we would have had to have laid off 2,000 employees and cut services. So in fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023, those funds were instrumental. Even in and as we move forward in fiscal year 24, they'll be instrumental. But they're allowing us to do some other things, like the funding to the arts. That's in addition to what you'll find in the regular budget, the $5 million. The One Clean Houston, for example, illegal dumping, things of that nature. That's allowing us to do some things and providing continuous pay for year 2 and year 3. Crisis intervention. And when you start talking about domestic abuse, mental behavioral health issues, and responding, the crisis intervention response team, and paying for them for year 2 and 3. So the ARPA funding has been instrumental in allowing us in a creative ways to do those things. And if we didn't have those dollars in fiscal year 22 and 23, then they certainly would have had a direct negative impact for fiscal year 24. So they have done precisely, I think, what they were intended to do with us utilizing the dollars in the way they intended us to use them.
I think after the last report that the city did for ARPA was that they had spent $343 million plus that's $160. I think that would leave around $100 left over. Is it your intent to leave that for the next mayor, or will you guys?
In pretty much all of those dollars have been obligated in certain categories. So I had this conversation, for example, with finance team about a week ago. All of those dollars have pretty much now been obligated. And
All
bear,
of the ARPA dollars?
yes, because bear in mind, we didn't want to start some services and then drop them at the end of December of this year. So with respect to the crisis intervention in HPD, the funding continues for the next 2 to 3 years. Same thing with One Clean Houston. The funding continues. So when you take into effect those out years that are being covered by the ARPA funding, those dollars have been pretty much committed.
I don't want to hug Mike, but
Same thing for some of our homeless initiatives as well.
I wanted to ask you about the DD-SRF transfer as well. So another $50 million. Well, so does all that money go into the CIP, or how does that money end up getting spent?
Listen, you want to come and take that one? I will. Whichever one.
Goes to District 8.
Yeah, it does go. It does go to the CIP. So, I mean, the whole point of it is for the pay-as-you-go. So as the debt is paid down, the captured revenue amount increases, and all of that goes towards capital projects.
Okay. And I know residents have been making requests about SWAT and LDP. Does this budget continue the $40 million allocation to SWAT?
Yes, it's 20 plus 20, and plus we're looking, trying to encourage the county to give even more dollars to the SWAT program. So we'll be able to add more dollars to some of the initiatives that they have been asking for. And then I will tell you that I am relooking, taking a second look at policies that changed a couple of decades ago, impacting maintenance, for example, of open ditches. And so I'll be looking to make some recommendations to City Council.
Okay. And how about the local drainage projects? Is that funding going up as well, or?
The SWAT projects?
I think there's SWAT and LDP, right? Maybe.
It's the same.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
This is off topic, and can you wait, if it's off topic, can we wait just a minute? Thank you so much. Are there any other questions related to the proposed F-24 budget?
Anything on the budget?
And we'll get with you in a minute, okay? Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else on the budget?
And Mayor, did you talk about when the council gets the budget? That's
yeah, let me have Will.
Really quick, I just wanted to, first of all, thank the mayor. I know he gave me a lot of kudos, but I've been able to learn a lot from him since he came into the office, and it really elevated myself, so I really thank you for that. I do stand behind this budget. It's one of the strongest that we've ever presented, and I appreciate the mayor for recognizing my team, but I do want to call out my deputy director over the budget, T. Reese, please stand. Her and her team are the ones that work the late nights, and Paula next to her. T could be up here as well. They do all the hard work of putting this together. So thank you, T. To my fellow directors, I really appreciate the support and the working together on this budget. This was a transition budget for us with OBB, and it required a lot of work from you all, and I really appreciate it. And to your CFOs, we put in a lot of work to try and change the budget and change how we share the budget with the citizens and with council. And I could not have done it without my fellow directors and the CFOs, and especially my team. And again, Mayor, it's been an honor working for you, and I've learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to carrying that on. So thank you.
I do want to make note, and Dylan, you did ask a question on opera funding and the amount that's encumbered, because what you may not see, and when I looked over and saw Lisa, and then it kind of hit me, like for the police radios, that is a $37 million commitment to be paid over 7 years. Well, to help the next mayor out, whoever he, yeah, I know, I shouldn't leave, but still waiting for the legislature to impose that COVID exemption. But But instead of just saying, okay, the radio is going to cost $37 million, you go find the $37 million, we are utilizing some of that opera funding, I think $15 to $20 million, to pay down on those radios, to give the next administration over a 7-year period time to find the additional dollars. So those are the sort of commitments that are being used by the opera dollars that, but for, you would have had to look someplace else. So when you add those type of down payments coming from opera funding, it just makes it easier for the next administration to come in, or at least give them time to try to work some things out. And same thing with the city council as well, for all of them who will be returning. Okay, y'all sure? No, nothing else? Sunshine. It's my final year, so I'm not rushing anything. So I mean, we all good?
Budget amendments, we're gonna spend that money.
Yeah. Now, no budget amendments. All right. Having said, I'm not gonna hold y'all long. What's that?
I had a question.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that gentleman.
Mary wanted to take it afterwards.
Which one? Oh,
Okay.
okay. Okay. Having said all of that, thank you all so very much. And yeah.